Yes, we were visited. Dear brothers and sisters, space changes the point of view. I am an ally of the concept of intelligent design. As you know, I am a religious person, and what I am saying here is no longer a secret and could be expressed by huge crowds of everything in their own words. Our universe could have been created as a result of intelligent design. There are many things in science that guide us to his conclusions. I can say for myself that I have been under the spell of space my entire life. However, I was a wimp and did not realize the importance of the development of space flight technology of those days in general. The space travel of Americans and Russians in the 1970s played a huge role in my entire life and still has a huge impact on what I do today, and will carry many those things with me for a long time, I think, as unawakened and not fully aware. Thus, I would go as far as to say that as a human from outer space, I constantly support creation, not evolution. I will not stop here at cosmic pluralism, i.e. the history of the idea of aliens, but I will go straight to my reflection on the spiritual sphere of the space age in the history of humanity. Many astronauts experience a special feelings when in cosmic space, which has been called the overview effect. It is usually believed that astronauts should be people who paradoxically have their feet firmly on the ground. They are trained to perform tasks in microgravity conditions that require great precision and sometimes ingenuity. When, for example, something goes wrong on the International Space Station, they are practically left to their own devices and possibly suggestions from ground-based flight control. Hence, it is believed that astronauts should not be in the clouds. Meanwhile, we are dealing with the opposite. When astronauts fly into space, something strange begins to happen to them. Many of them report experiences on the border between spirituality and religion. They begin to feel unity with the world, with other people, and even claim that they have an irresistible feeling that someone is looking down on them. These experiences may or may not have an impact on their later lives. Interestingly, these symptoms affect not only astronauts who believe, but also those who do not believe or are indifferent to religion and God. I recall cosmic euphoria. The term was coined in 1987 by Frank White, author of The Overview Effect, Space Exploration and Human Evolution. In 1971, James Irwin was the lunar module pilot on Apollo 15. He was a non-practicing Protestant until the moon landing. However, this experience had a strong impact on his spiritual life. After returning from the moon, he said, "I was a silent Christian, but I feel that God sent me to the moon so that I could return to earth and preach about his son, Jesus Christ." A year after the moon landing, Irwin left NASA and founded the High Flight Foundation. His activities focus on preaching Jesus Christ and promoting the idea that science supports creation, not evolution. Irwin also organized search expeditions to Turkey to find Noah's Ark. In turn, Edgar Mitchell, another astronaut who suffered the so-called cosmic euphoria, although he chose a different path than James Irwin. Mitchell was the pilot of the Apollo 14 lunar module, which landed on the moon in early 1971. However, in addition, he experimented with states on the border of consciousness. This is a standard part of preparation for space flight, and it is not uncommon for astronauts to experience this during missions due to the overload caused by the acceleration of the rockets as they take off. While returning to Earth, Mitchell experienced a feeling he later described as samadhi. In Eastern religions, this term means a strong meditative state and a feeling of spiritual unity with all reality and all beings. After leaving NASA in 1972, Mitchell co-founded a research institute for psychic phenomena and founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences. Someone said that Mitchell experienced not only the so-called overview effect, but something even stronger, which he called ultraview effect. Weibel explains this is an emotional reaction to the sight of an incredibly starry sky. It wasn't just Edgar Mitchell who experienced this feeling. An anonymous astronaut named Zach by Weibel, journalist, poignantly described his experience of seeing the Milky Way while passing over the moon. At one point, while I was orbiting the moon, the Earth and the Sun were obscured by the moon, and I found myself in complete darkness. And suddenly the stars outside started looking like this that I wasn't ready for. There were so many stars that I couldn't see a single one. I saw only light. I don't know if you could call it spiritual or not, but when I saw that star, felt like no one else had seen it. Very deep thoughts came to my mind. This experience changed Zach greatly. He started writing poetry in which he said, among other things, about the mentioned starred fields, but it set him on a very unusual and controversial spiritual path. He recognized that we are not alone in the universe, and even that some figures from Earth's history, such as the biblical Noah, were visitors from space. Here is yet another example of a secular astronaut, this time from Great Britain, now United Kingdom, who felt the effect of space euphoria. In 2016, after returning to Earth from the International Space Station, although he remained an agnostic, Timothy Peake began to promote the view that everything that exists around us points us towards the concept of intelligent design. He refers to both the view of Earth from space and the laws of physics on a macro scale. I paraphrase his words. Even though I say I'm not a religious person, that doesn't mean I don't seriously consider the idea that our universe may have been created by intelligent design. There are many things in science that lead us to this conclusion. The mentioned cases are just a fragment of the very controversial epic about encounters with UFOs in space, which, according to some opinions, are still kept top secret, although astronauts have seen UFOs since the beginning of the human spaceflight program. What has attracted the most attention is the story of what Edwin, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins encountered during the Apollo 11 mission. There was something that was close enough to be observed. But what was it? Said the legendary Buzz Aldrin in an interview years later, who was the second man in history to set foot on the lunar soil. We couldn't just ask, "Hey Houston, there is something flying near us, but we don't know what. Can you tell us what it is?" The transmissions could have been listened to by various people. And who knows, maybe someone would have demanded that we turn back because of the aliens, he added. Not knowing what they were actually dealing with, the Apollo 11 astronauts asked Houston where one of the separated rockets stages was located. Although Aldrin claimed that the alleged UFOs were actually elements of his floating in space. This was not the end of the moon landing controversy. The grease for conspiracy theorists was Neil Armstrong's ambiguous statement about what he saw on the surface of the lunar mare Tranquillitatis, where the Sea Tranquillitatis, where the Americans landed on July 20, 1969. It is said that they were not the only intelligent beings present there at the time. I can't go into details except that their ships were far superior to ours in terms of speed and technology. Armstrong reportedly said, adding that despite the aliens' presence, NASA continued the Apollo program because it did not want to risk panic. Regardless of how we evaluate the spiritual path that individual astronauts have chosen, one thing seems certain. Astronauts looking at the globe from above and at the starry cosmos when the sun is obscured truly experience the overview effect, or cosmic euphoria. It could be one of only 4 Apollo astronauts: Michael Collins, Apollo 11, Derek Gordon, Apollo 12, Al Worden, Apollo 15, or Ken Mattingly, Apollo 16, or the only astronauts who stayed in the command module around the moon while their colleagues were on the surface and lived or are alive long enough to give interviews to Weibel, which began conducting them in 2004. Stuart Rosa, Apollo 14, and Ron Evans, Apollo 17, died in the 1990s. Miroslav Hermaszewski, the only Pole who flew into space and felt the presence of something or someone there looking at him, said the following words about his colleagues from the Soviet Union: "I don't know anyone who was a believer and came back an atheist, but I know people who went into space and as unbelievers and returned with faith. I mean mainly my colleagues from the East. In fact, 95% of Soviet cosmonauts converted. In short, it is very difficult to be an atheist in space. The view of the Earth from space and the view of space itself fills man with so much reverence that it changes his life. Questions come to mind. Where do such feelings come from in a person? What or who put them in humans that certain stimuli on human can awaken them? Why is it that no animal can experience such feelings? There can be one answer. Only God could create man and give him these feelings, because evolution and natural selection do not have such abilities."